What's going on, lads and lasses? Welcome back to 100% Mags. So it's that time of year again where we predict the Premier League table for the upcoming season, and of course this time it is the 21-22 Premier League season. If you can, please hit a like on the video. If we can get 10 likes, that would be absolutely fantastic. If you're new around here or if you haven't done it yet, also please hit the bell and subscribe to the channel as I'm on the road to 600 subscribers. So, as always with this video, we're going to do the same format that we do every year, and we're going to go from 20th place all the way up to, of course, first, and who I think is going to win the Premier League this season. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So, in at number 20th, we are going with a newly promoted side in Watford. Now, the reason I'm going with Watford in a 20th place is the fact that, you know, they haven't signed anybody of massive note. Yes, they've got Danny Rose. Yes, they've got Josh King. But are they going to be able to do something for Watford in this Premier League season? Because last season, you know, they didn't look that good going forward as players. They weren't that great. And, you know, yes, they're now at new teams and different tactics and all that stuff. But are they going to be able to impact the Watford side to be able to keep them in the Premier League for another season, with them of course newly promoted to the Premier League this season? Well, it'll all remain to be seen. Of course, there is time for Watford to get even more transfers in, so they could sign somebody of massive note for their club and be able to push on from there. But for me, it's 20th for Watford. Moving on to 19th place, and I was kind of stuck between Norwich and Crystal Palace for this place. I have decided upon that, and I am going with Crystal Palace in this place. Now, yes, many people will say Crystal Palace do have Patrick Vieira as manager, but looking at Crystal Palace this season, they are in a transition phase from the previous seasons. Of course, they no longer have Roy Hodgson as a manager. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? We'll have to wait and see. Of course, Crystal Palace fans will be hoping it is a good thing that they no longer have Roy Hodgson as their manager, but they do have a very slim team now, with quite a few of their first teamers moving on last season, either expired contracts or just being sold up. Of course, some of them players being Andros Townsend, Gary Cahill, Scott Dann, Nathan Clyne, Wayne Hennessy. You know, some of them have ended up going to other Premier League sides as well on free transfers. Is it a wise thing by Crystal Palace that they did that? That they let them contracts just run down? Should they have maybe tried to offload a few of them players, you know, for cash this season to try and improve their squad going forward? In my eyes, yes, they should have, but to be honest, you know, it looks like they might have not had that option. So, any Crystal Palace fans that are watching, you know, let us know your thoughts down in the comments below about that. But I'm going with Crystal Palace to finish in at 19th place in the league. Moving on to 18th place, now I'm going to go with Brighton to finish in at 18th place. And the reason behind that being, they've signed some players, but they have just gotten rid of a really good anchor for their team in Ben White to Arsenal for 50 million. Now, like I say, you know, there's still the transfer window open, so they can still rectify that problem by bringing in, you know, some more talent for that 50 million that they've just cooped off of Arsenal for Ben White, which is an absolutely amazing amount to be able to get, you know, for a player that has only played a handful of games for England on the international scene and only really came to recognition in my eyes, you know, last season in the Premier League. And of course, he played down in the Championship before that with Leeds United out on loan, of course. But I'm going to go with Brighton to finish in at 18th place. Just don't think at this moment in time, you know, that they have any real threat to push forward for any better than an 18th place finish in the league. Moving on to 17th, and of course it's another newly promoted side, and it is of course Brentford, a Premier League side, you know, that are brand new in the Premier League. They've never played in the Premier League before, as far as I'm concerned. They have spent reasonably well bringing in Christophe Aguerd from Celtic for 13.5 million, somebody that was heavily linked with Newcastle, of course my club, and we ended up losing out on him going to Brentford for 13.5 million. He was only being linked to it for about 11 million at the time, so Brentford have paid a bit more to be able to acquire him from Celtic. Hopefully, I'm sure Celtic, Brentford fans will be hoping that he is a really good player for them moving forward. He could be the anchor for their defence as well this season, and they do have some really good goal scorers as well at Brentford, like Ivan Toney. They did have some other great players there as well, but quite a few of them did get scooped up by different clubs, so we'll have to wait and see as time goes on in the season how Brentford play out, but I think they're going to finish in or around the 17th place of the league at the bottom end of the table. I think that's a pretty respectable position for a side, that haven't played Premier League football before. Moving on from 17th place, and we're going to 16th place, and I'm going to go with Southampton here. Now, Southampton have done some alright business in the window. They've brought back in, of course, an old favourite and, of course, icon of their club, some might say, in Theo Walcott on a free transfer from Everton. Now, is that a good deal or not? In my eyes, it is. Even though he's aging now, he's on the other end of the age scale, he's still a really good player, and I think he's going to be a really good player for Southampton. And, they've still got the likes of James Ward-Prowse there as well. They've got some other great players as well, like Yannick Vestergaard as well. So I think with them players and with Theo Walcott being added to that bunch as well, I think Southampton have got a good shout for finishing in all round that 16th place in the Premier League this season. Moving on to 15th place, and I'm going to go with Burnley here now. Burnley, for me, they're one of them teams where Sean Dyche tries to do his best with them every single season. He just tries to build upon that previous season, and they've done reasonably well, I think, with the window, in the fact that they brought in Wayne Hennessy, which was Crystal Palace's number one last season. They brought him in on a free. It would have cost them some money if Crystal Palace had have been able to go down the route of selling him. But would Burnley have still wanted him if they had to pay for him? I don't think they would have. Nathan Collins as well coming in from Stoke on an undisclosed fee, but they have gotten rid of players in the fact of Ben Gibson. He was a really good player for Burnley, and he is now gone off to a Premier League rival, in a rival around the position where you'd think Burnley would be finishing in the league as well, of Norwich. Ben Gibson ended up going to Robbie Brady as well. His contract expired as well. So we'll have to see how Burnley go in this Premier League season, but I think they're going to finish in or around the 15th place in the league. Moving on to 14th place in the league, and I think this is going to be the area where Norwich are going to be in or around come the end of the season. They've brought in some pretty good players. Obviously, they've got Angus Gunning from Southampton to be in goal for them. They've obviously got in Rashica from Werder Bremen for 9.4 million, which is an absolute steal, I've got to say. That was a really good deal by Norwich. I would have loved to have seen a player like Rashica coming and playing for Newcastle. Just seeing the way he's played in the Bundesliga over the years, he's a really good player, and he looks like he could be a really good future prospect for Norwich City, hopefully. I'm sure Norwich City fans will be hoping that he will do the business and keep them in the Premier League, as they have been given the aforementioned, name of the Yo-Yo Club which quite a few clubs do get that put on them after a while, of keep going between the Championship and the Premier League, and that is a label you do not want. But I think Rashica could do the business for them, and he could keep them in the Premier League this season. That is why, I am picking them for a finish in or around the 14th place in the league. Of course, they've got Billy Gilmore in on loan as well, a player that was heavily linked with Newcastle, and of course he's ended up going to Norwich. But 14th place for me, that's where I am thinking Norwich will finish there or thereabouts. Moving on to 13th, and this is where I think Newcastle are going to finish in a 13th place. We haven't really recruited anybody. Mostly we've gotten youngsters in through the door for the youth team, but of course no signings as of yet for the first team. We're the only club in the country not to have signed a player, and I'm talking about literally down to the lowest tier of English professional football. Everybody's signed one, and we still haven't signed any. Now, that is obviously because of the takeover saga that is still looming in the background from the previous season, and it's probably going to still loom for quite a while, until, of course, that arbitration case gets going in the 27th or 29th of September, I believe it is now, for that hearing, and hopefully we will hear, that Newcastle can have a takeover, and then of course we'll be able to move on from there. But until then, I can't see we're finishing any higher than 13th there or thereabouts. Last season under Steve Bruce, we managed to finish in the 12th place. Now, that was not down to the fact of Steve Bruce. That was down to the factor of course, the Gateshead Guardiola in Jonesy coming in and showing his tactical awareness. Something that we have seen, during the summer period as well with England in the Euros. We're seeing it. We're seeing what Jones can do, and one of the vital reasons why England made it to the final as well of the Euros was because of the likes of Jonesy being on the setup. And of course, that's something we're hoping to see as Newcastle United fans next season. Jonesy doing that again for Newcastle, and hopefully finishing in a really respectable place. I hope we do finish higher than 13th, but that is me. My opinion. At the end of the day, I think we're going to finish in 13th or thereabouts come the end of the season. Moving on to 12th place, and I'm going to go with West Ham here. Now, I would have put West Ham higher up, but they just had a really good season under David Moyes. I think, they're going to find it difficult this season to try and build upon that season, what they just had. Now, yes, they might have dominated Celtic in a friendly, but at the end of the day, that's friendly. The Premier League football and competitive football is completely different to friendlies. They have brought in some reasonably good players in Alfonso Areola of PSG on loan. They brought in Terry Neves as well of Reading, and of course some other players as well. But they have gotten rid of players as well. They've gotten rid of Balbuena. They've gotten rid of Philip Anderson to Lazio. They've gotten rid of some of their players. So we'll have to see how they go. But I think they're going to finish there or thereabouts come the end of the season in at 12th place. Moving on to 11th place, and I think this is where Wolves are going to be finishing. I just don't see them finishing any higher, to be honest. They've just gotten rid of Rui Patricio as well, who is, even though he's aging and he's on the other side of 30 now, he's still a really good goalkeeper. He was their number one goalkeeper, and now they've gotten rid of him. I think they're going to struggle this season, and they're going to find it hard to finish inside that top 10, and especially with Nuno Espirito Santo as well going off to Spurs to be their manager. They're under a new manager now as well, so we'll have to see how that works out for Wolves. But you know, I think they're going to finish in 11th place all the same, there or thereabouts. Moving on to the top 10 now, and I think Aston Villa are going to be finishing in at 10th place. You know, that might change yet because Aston Villa are still heavily linked with Jack Grealish going off to, of course, Manchester City. You know, but they still have signed some decent players in Emilio Buendia from Norwich for 38 million. Ashley Young in on a free transfer from Inter Milan as well. But, you know, if Jack Grealish does end up going off to the likes of Manchester City, that is going to change things quite a bit. I think at Aston Villa, as he is the playmaker, of course, for their team. But I still think, you know, that they're going to finish within there or thereabouts around 10th place in the league. Moving on to 9th place, and of course, I think Leeds United are going to finish in at 9th place. Moving on to 8th place, and I think Arsenal are going to finish there. 7th place, I think it's going to be Spurs. 6th place, I think it's going to be Everton. 5th, I think it's going to be Leicester. And of course, that takes what on to, of course, the top 4. And I think that is going to be in at number 4. We're going to go with Liverpool in at number 4. And I think we're going to go with Chelsea in a 3rd. Man United in its 2nd. Man United's been spending a lot of money of late as well in the window. Bringing in the likes of, you know, Jadon Sancho. They've brought in Raphael Varane as well. They're trying to bring in Haaland for next year. They're still trying for quite a few different players. They've even brought in Tom Heaton on a free from Aston Villa. You know, I don't know where he's going to fit in their team, but they have brought in Tom Heaton on a free from Aston Villa. I think Man United are going to finish in at 2nd place in the league. And of course, as always, as everybody always does predict, Manchester City is going to finish 1st in the Premier League, even though they've gotten rid of the likes of Sergio Aguero, Eric Garcia, Jack Harrison. You know, so many big names have left Manchester City. I still think Man City are destined to finish 1st in the Premier League this season. I'm sure quite a few people would love for me to be wrong. Obviously, I would love for myself to be wrong, you know, and somebody else to be winning the Premier League title. Obviously, I would love for my own team to win it, but that's not the case. That's never going to happen until, of course, we do get the eventual takeover through the door, which just feels like it's going to be forever before that ever happens, to be honest. But them are my predictions for the 21-22 Premier League season. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, remember to like, share and subscribe to 100% Mags. And if you like the content, make sure to stick around and watch many of the other videos on my channel. I do cover a bunch of other stuff as well. I do some gaming content as well from time to time, so make sure to check that out. It's not just Newcastle related content, there is gaming content on as well. I do have a couple of guests now and again coming on from other clubs as well and talking about their teams and talking about their thoughts on their seasons as well. So make sure to check out all that stuff. Until next time, I'll see you all later, and how are the lads?